Sean, this is the Global Digest think tank group. You are our guest today. How can you describe about yourself and your activity, your company?
Yes, for the last 7 years, I've been working with a non-governmental organization called Groundwork London, doing urban research, so urban design research, mostly with European funded projects called Horizon Europe. Um, I've recently rejoined the university world, so I'm now back to teaching urban design in part-time. So I'm doing that as well. I'm part of a United Nations think tank called Resilience Frontiers. So I do that, but that's voluntary work. That's not part of my and I still do just consulting for different organizations. I have a strong connection with Brazil, the country of Brazil. So I just finished a project there, and I tend to do some work almost every year in Brazil. But yeah, so I'm based in London with this NGO. But my work there is, like I said, now shifting back towards university professor status, it seems. But I don't, I haven't worked directly for a government organization in a long time. Many years ago, I worked in the planning department, but it's been a long time. Yeah. So I'm not in one organization. I'm connected to a number of organizations.
Right,
So
right.
as I said, the work I've done with European funded urban design research is sustainable research. And we finished probably about a year and a half ago now a very interesting research project called Clever Cities. That was 5 years long of work and research. And that project, just to describe it very succinctly, is was to evaluate the changes in social dynamics because of the implementation or related to the implementation of nature-based solutions, and to do that in a manner that is under uh, community-led design or co-creation, if you will, and also investigates collaborative governance. So we're moving. So nature-based solutions are things that we all know it's related to green infrastructure. So, but we're talking about green roofs and green walls and green corridors and all sorts of solutions to urban issues that can be realized with plants and understanding water movement and geological processes and things like that. So you're using nature to improve the quality of life. But we're not researching so much the biophysical aspects anymore. So if you take the example of a lake, which we have, and you want to make that water cleaner, you can do that with plants and reeds, and you can have the water filtering through the plants. So we did that to a degree. And but we weren't interested in measuring just how well the reeds filtered the water. We know that they work now, so we don't need more evidence about that. What we wanted to investigate is how it changed the way people interact around it. So, do people use the region more? Do they feel safer? Is there any sort of social connection or social cohesion? So we're now trying to get more evidence that the way you work with nature changes the way, like I said, the social dynamics, the way people connect. And my big focus in sustainable urban design mostly has been about the idea of social dynamics, social cohesion, social process, particularly around the idea of what makes a strong uh, neighborhood. So I'm currently writing a book called Socially Connected Neighborhoods. So what is it we need to do to make neighborhoods really social entities? You know, a neighborhood isn't just a space like, oh, it has a name, but it should be more than that. A neighborhood should be where people grow as individuals so that you, as an individual, you have the chance to become a better person, to understand, to feel grounded, to
Sure.
neighborhoods should help what we call social progression. So you should move from somebody who's very isolated and individual slowly to a position where you're interacting with people and becoming what we call part of the social cohesion, which means being involved. So actually helping making decisions and helping to, so we want people to progress in that way. We want neighborhoods to build capacities of people. So a neighborhood should be part of the learning journey of individuals and collectives. So a neighborhood should, and we want neighborhoods to become better decision-making structures over this. So we call that social innovation. So I call them four different progressions. And a lot of talk about neighborhoods now is about called 15-minute cities. It's about making neighborhoods smaller because then you can walk to them and you don't need to drive your car, and that's all good. But I
Uh,
don't think that's the idea. The heart of a good neighborhood is social connections, and that's my work, my most important work within the overall idea of sustainable cities. It's about being sustainable for me is about changing behaviors.
Social
People are,
connection. You
yeah,
also
yeah.
mean about socialization, not
Socialization, like I said,
not to
I've
be
called that social
isolated.
progression, but that's the same word as socialization. So you, like I said, you go from being somewhat isolated in your home, maybe working on your computer, to becoming part of the community in a gradualization. So socialization is a good word for that as well. Yeah.
This is, you may like lake to be clean water and mountain to be more beautiful and many things designing urban designing mainly in London district anywhere in UK.
The research projects that I work on or have been working on, but I'm not sure if I will be in the future. Again, they're called living labs or living laboratories. So it's like you do research, but you do it in the city. You're not in a small little place because it's very complex, and you're doing it. You actually build things in a city. And for the most part, they are urban projects. So I haven't done much work in rural areas, mostly very city-based. And these projects always involve multiple cities across Europe and sometimes outside of Europe. The Horizon Fund allows for projects to be outside of Europe as well. So, but that means looking at cities like London. Again, the last big project was Clever Cities was London, Hamburg, and Milan. So Hamburg in Germany, Milan in Italy were the three major cities. But then we also had other cities that were partners in that project,
I
like
see. So
Madrid
it means
and Malmo.
horizontal project, they selected particular city to urban designing.
Yeah, you actually the cities get together and they make a proposal and compete to get the funding. But you have to do that beforehand.
I see.
Excuse me.
So not every city they successfully win the fund, right? Only each
Not even
city.
close. It's becoming very, very competitive, this fund. It's sometimes 30 or 40 consortiums. So, and every consortium has 7 or 8 cities and 20 organizations, and they all compete for these funds. But they're very significant. Like I said, they're enough to pay for 4 or 5 years of research.
Did in
There's a list of over 35 countries which can join these funding projects across the world. I think there's might even be more than 35. Most recently, we included cities in Kenya, in Africa, and we have worked with some other cities in Latin America. But my work in Brazil is separate. It's because I used to live and work professionally for many years in Brazil. I had a design office together with a Spanish architect, Floriano Friaza Moedo. So his well, our office, but he's the lead architect, still exists, still works. And so I still do work with them, usually about nature-based solutions as well and community-led design and the same things. But I do that for him for projects within Brazil. Brazil is one of the countries that cannot typically participate in the European funded projects. It's considered too wealthy and well advanced. So it's usually countries that are not as wealthy as Brazil that are able to join Horizon projects as partner cities.
I see.
But in terms of economics, Burma should be able to participate, I'm for sure. It just depends if the Burmese government has made that
Which means
application.
the horizontal project is a government-based project.
It's the European Union, Horizon Europe. I said once the government on a national level has joined Horizon Europe, then it becomes just any city or any government or any partner. Then it's easy. It's just that the government has to make the first step.
Fine,
I'm
horizontal project. I don't know horizontal project deal with those trash, or have you ever experienced uh, related to trash issue?
again like that hasn't been a specific focus. But again, if you look at it, trash or anything like that is about human behavior. It's what incentivates people, what gives them, like I said, the incentives to do things or not do things. Is it easy or is it difficult to recycle and is there ways to prevent the production of plastics and things like that before, can you remove them? But all of that comes down, the environmental issues tend to come to that one question: what changes people's behavior patterns? So how do you influence people to alter their patterns? And that is usually roughly the same uh, influencing systems. So if you think about an example I always give is about driving your car. You drive your car in a way that doesn't hit people or hit things because of many different systems that are changing your behavior at all moments. You've had a training course, you have information lights, so you've had education, you get information, there's lights, stop, go. There's a nicely paved road, hopefully, that helps you drive straight. You actually have an architectural space to drive in because of the posts and the facades of the buildings. You have an incentive to get to where you want to go to meet your friends. You have a positive incentive, and then you have a negative incentive because there's rules and punishments if you do things incorrectly. And it's only when all of those things start to work together, then you change the way people act. So if you say, I want to change the fact that people are throwing um, waste into a river, let's say going through the city and they're just throwing it into the river, you have to have all those same things that changes the way people drive. You have to have education and information and incentives, positive incentives, negative incentives. And once you have all of those things, people will stop throwing waste
But in
in the river.
Asia,
But
I mean,
yeah,
I agree. Behavior, as you said, the important of behavior facility uh, put in place, and then behavior of people psychologically also improve. I think
yeah,
European, you have a very good system to put in place where is trash box and where is a location for throwing trash, and you have a truck carrying trash and all this systematic location. I guess you are doing cleaning lake and cleaning water in the lake. So I think you make better. I mean, designing also important, and also facility also important.
Yeah, I would just be careful to, like I said, to know that it's both physical and non-physical things that have to work. If you have the best
Right,
collection trucks and you have a place to do recycling, and it doesn't matter if people do not have incentives, information, and education. Things have to raise together. So you can't just have good infrastructure and poor community structure. They have to rise together. One can rise a bit faster than the other, but you have to have what we say coherence among the behavior spheres. So, like I said, infrastructure makes things easy, but if you don't, you have the best recycling plant in the world. But if people from their homes have no idea what you're doing with that, then they won't separate waste into the recycling parts, and then the system will fail because people haven't got the incentives or the education or the information to help the process. It's always going to be a human physical process. So
right,
that's where we have to focus on creating a balance between things and not letting politicians only try to do physical projects. Oh, we've built a new recycling plant. Yay. It won't work if you don't work with the communities that are part of that recycling system. It's behavior change,
right.
but we have to think of the physical projects as part of the behavior change, not the other way around. Like I said, I don't look to solutions from people of higher wealth in particular. For me, I think change can come from the neighborhood. For me, that is the structure that if people learn to make neighborhoods more cohesive and to increase their what we call social innovation, their power to make decisions collectively, they can become very powerful neighborhoods. Not, it doesn't matter how much money they have. If you're talking, 10,000 people together become a very powerful political unit. And not that you'll have all 10,000 people in a neighborhood together, but you'll have a general portion of them thinking in with the same values and the same goals. And if you can get those, and I know you can do this, but uh, through collaborative governance work that we've seen some very positive work happening. I think that's the pathway to the change. And then wealthy people will come on board as they come on board. But I don't really think it's something to focus on. At least you could focus on maybe in parallel, but it's not the center of the issue. For me, the center of the issue is improving how we work in little communities, like the actual city, which is a big thing, becomes little communities that have enough voice, collective voice, to be powerful enough to wrest change. And I've done this in Brazil, where we've worked with a community and we set up what we called meta NGOs. So these were NGOs, so non-governmental organizations that helped other non-governmental organizations and other social groups become more organized and work together. And that became part of the neighborhood structure. So you have one group of NGOs, one NGO in particular, that helps to train the other ones so that they get better at requesting funds, writing projects, speaking to the city when things are not well in a constructive manner, but making criticisms, but trying to be a good partner to the city, but just changing the social innovation structure of a neighborhood. If you do that with multiple neighborhoods, and in Brazil, it was very quickly important to local politicians and things like that, that this neighborhood be listened to because they started to act in a somewhat uniformed way. They weren't all talking about different things. You really get power quickly if you do a little bit of organization. It's not utopia. It's not that everybody starts to agree. No, you just have a good group of people that have connections and then start to have common goals and learn how to work together a little bit. That's all you need. And if you do that with a bunch of neighborhoods, then a rich individual can join or not join, and the politicians, they will have to listen. Otherwise, you can vote them out as a group, and it becomes in a democratic situation. I'm not, sure every situation. In a non-democratic situation, I don't know how to deal with that, but that's how I approach it in these countries that have at least reasonably functioning democratic process.
London is more multicultural city, so I don't think I don't know how's the dealing with the multiracial and multicultural. When you said about urban designing and the behavior, how do you see that? That's the behavior when you talk about it should be also not good for discrimination and behavior, right?
Yes, for sure. My experience is, well, so when we talk about a neighborhood or a neighborhood is rarely one community. So a neighborhood should be a well-contained region that doesn't have too many people. Neighborhoods shouldn't be bigger than 20,000 people. They should be anywhere between 5 and 20,000 people. And they should have some sort of identity in terms of a physical space. But within a neighborhood, there's many communities. So some communities might be virtual. Let's say I live in a neighborhood and my most important community is my sports team. I'm part of I go to watch sport. That's my community. It's not, but you need at least one or two of those communities should be what we call place-based. So a community that's connected to the place. So you can have many communities, a few of which are connected to the physical place, and that people who know each other a little bit and are familiar. Within that, you can have multicultural communities as well. So people who, again, so my community might be connected to the sports team, but my community might be connected a little bit more to the Nigerian culture because there's many of us who migrated from Nigeria and we live in this region. So a lot of my friends are from Nigeria. But I find that once you start bringing people together and you do the techniques that we do about, we call inclusive co-creation or inclusive co-production. That means inclusive community decision making. Most people have the same goals. Most people want to have good well-being and they want to have safety and they want to have access to food and they want to have places for their children to play. And as soon as you start talking about those things together, there's a lot more in common than different. And I find that people, at least in London, are very open to working across cultures and different things. But yeah, we shouldn't expect a neighborhood to be a uniform thing. It should be rich. It might be strongly from one culture or another. That's fine. But we do have to learn to make decisions together. But I don't think it's as difficult as people think. And in my working with communities, sometimes you have to work to build trust, and you have to try to overcome barriers. So you might need to get a translator, so people who speak different languages are there. But once people sit down and start having coffee and discussing ideas and looking at the solutions, they quickly realize that they have more in common than they do have differences. So I think it's exaggerated a little bit, the idea that there's these things, there's all these big differences. I do find that people, like I said, have very similar goals for their families, and they can really agree on a lot, and they can really, if you just bring food in, people like to share their different foods from different cultures, and that really connects people. So you can do that. Food and community gardens are really powerful connecting things. And it's just we can literally make the community work together in a very interesting way. And London's a very good place for this. It's really
Yes.
accepted, I think.
when you are organizing, when you are designing, urban designing about neighborhood organizing, yourself organize or you let the municipal or local town office let them organize? Who organize when you are doing a groundwork?
So we need to do partnerships, um, but in every neighborhood and every municipality is different. Some municipalities still do not have much community organization. Others have a lot of community organization. So it's very different every single place, but the tendency is to move to a partnership where, like I said, neighborhoods become stronger and they can communicate and have more decision-making power, but it's not all the decision-making power. It's a partnership with the authorities, the government, and the government authorities, let's say the municipal, has to also change the way they think to see themselves as partners to the neighborhoods. And they can help them and guide them. And in some cases, if a neighborhood is making decisions in a non-inclusive and non-democratic way, then the authorities can come in and say, okay, we have to rethink this. So they do have the power to change or to veto or alter things, but it is a partnership approach, though there is still a little bit more power above than below. That's still always going to be true, but it's how you dose that power. It's like I said, your approach as a partner and you use your changing power very lightly. And again, the neighborhood can also enforce that with, like I said, constructive criticism and creating a dialogue with the authorities and being uniform or more uniform. So it's what we call it nested go co-governance. Nested, like a bird's nest inside of a bird's nest inside of a bird's nest. And you have to design connections between the levels very strongly. And it's not just say, okay, we're the government, pay us fees for whatever, and that's it. Your job is to pay us fees. No, the government is there to help, to serve, and to partner. So
I mean, yourself, you ever done any organizing community or neighborhood, or you just doing a
yes,
business?
yes, very much so. Yes. Again, this last research project, we worked in South Thamesmead, and we started with a community that no longer believed in the government power. They thought they had been treated poorly many decades, and they just no longer trusted the governments at all. And it took us 5 years. But we slowly changed, I think, that attitude, at least in the small region we worked. We helped to create a community uh, design leading group that made decisions about projects. We had a partnership with a housing association that was also very important. And so, but we changed the way the community felt about participating and trusting that they can change the impact of projects and the way money is spent. And it was successful in that sense. If you go into that community, not everybody, again, we didn't create a utopia. All we created was some better systems and a lot of people who now think that they trust that the arrangement of power sharing is working for them.